Hello, Feuzion. My name is Alex Fuse, host of Fusion News. Today is a big day for you. I have a very great guest on my show tonight, Jessica Kleinschmidt. She reports on the MLB. So, Jessica, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. It's been another busy day in the world of baseball,
Yeah.
but I'm hanging in there. How are you doing?
Good. So, I know this is just spring training right now, but this New York Yankees team, they're looking pretty good, aren't they?
They are. They are. There's going to be a lot of battles, which will be actually making spring training a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I love about spring training is usually a lot of people worry about, well, they're not really playing at their best or their strongest ability, which is normal. They don't want to get injured before the season goes on. But if there's a spring training battle, that's the team you have to follow in Arizona or Florida. When it comes to especially the Yankees, there's so many options that could happen. It's Chris Carter and Greg Bird at first base. We don't know how much of the injury towards Tyler Austin is really going to affect his playing ability. He will be out until probably opening day, but that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be playing on opening day. Aaron Judge is, of course, a phenomenal power bat to watch. We don't know where he's going to end up, if he will start in AAA or not. Clint Frazier, of course, another guy that we're excited to watch, and then, of course, some of those guys coming back into the season. So the Yankees are they have a lot of storylines. Mm-hmm. It'll just be interesting to see how those play out as spring training comes to a close.
Mm-hmm. If you were the Yankees and the general manager like Brian Cashman, would you try to deal away Brett Gardner or Jacoby Ellsbury to really make room for guys like Clint Frazier, like you mentioned, to really get on this 25-man roster? Because chances are Clint Frazier will not make this roster come opening day.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Cashman, I think he definitely has a lot of certain scenarios where it's like, what are we going to exactly do? But I think there's going to be some sort of blockbuster trade perhaps the next couple years. Bryce Harper is going to be a free agent soon, and him along with, the names of Manny Machado and even Zach Britton, those guys are all going to be free agents during the same year. So we don't really know if that could occur. Bryce Harper to the Yankees is, of course, one of the many places he could go, but they're also one of the only few teams that could really afford a guy like Bryce Harper. So we don't really know what could happen the next few years. But Clint Frazier could very well, like you mentioned, start in AAA, but that doesn't necessarily mean he won't get promoted. I don't see him making anything too crazy getting rid of those types of guys that you did mention, but you never really know when it comes to not just the Yankees, but baseball itself.
Mm-hmm. Now I have to ask you, we'll switch gears and talk another American League East. Now, David Price, there's been rumors that he has been hurting. What is going on with David Price and the Boston Red Sox? And this is a really big story because if, in fact, he is injured, where does that leave the starting rotation for the Red Sox? Because their starting rotation last year wasn't that great.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a lot of pressure on David Price heading into the season just itself. That's definitely something that I was worried about him for the overall aspect. A 3.99 ERA in 2016 is not a characteristic that David Price is used to. So you add that on top of the fact of gaining Chris Sale from the White Sox, getting rid of those really big names, Yohan Moncada and, of course, the others, was certainly added pressure to him. So now that we know the injury isn't so bad, it's still there, I think it's going to be in the back of his mind. And, of course, during spring training, you're allowed to exaggerate some of those worries. If you're feeling at all fatigued, at all sort of soreness, you go to the trainer, you tell them what's up. You tell them, hey, something's going on, and we have a certain amount of time. So his injury could have been very well exaggerated, and it could have also been way worse, right? He could have had a Tommy John surgery type of scenario. It could have been way worse, but he's only going to be out 7 to 10 days. But when you fly to the NFL Combine and have to talk to Dr. James Andrews, yourself, obviously people are going to be worried. So he's only going to be out for a little over a week. He did have the MRI, which was inconclusive, and all of that. But the diagnosis, the ligaments are intact, but the problem is muscular, which, I mean, I don't know, the details, but I do know an injury expert was recently talking about David Price, and when it comes to a fantasy value, he said that you could definitely have some confidence in David Price. The weird part is when you're looking at him, if anything, from a fantasy value, which, of course, being a fantasy analyst, my mind goes there, it might actually calm some of the nerves down. Last year, when it came to him, he was overvalued, overpriced, no pun intended, and that kind of worked out out to be a negative factor with him. So I think this year I'm a little bit stressed when it comes to the pressure that's on him. When he has to have a comeback year, he has to worry about lowering that ERA, making it more David Price-like, and just kind of, mentally becoming sound. And I mean, he had a lot going on over the last couple of years, going from team to team, signing huge contracts, having to be a number, behind Chris Sale after this, postseason or off-season trade. So I think there's a lot of pressure on him, which worries, me for just knowing that he's a great human being. That worries me, but this is a bounce back season for him, and I think he's very capable of it.
Mm-hmm. One player on this Red Sox team that is really looking for their comeback year is Pablo Sandoval, and he's been looking like a totally different player in spring training. And after missing all of last season, what can we expect from Pablo Sandoval this season, and what do the Red Sox want to see from him this season?
I mean, I think the Red Sox are still mourning the loss of David Ortiz. And the thing that people tend to forget is, David Ortiz, of course, put that DH position on the map. He was huge for the city of Boston. He was a great clubhouse guy. But you also have to remember, he had one of the best 2016 campaigns of anyone. And not just, and it was also a career year for him, a high career 2016 campaign. So when it comes to Sandoval, he has some big shoes to fill. Unfortunately, he's got to kind of emulate the loss of Ortiz. But like you mentioned, he is going to be a different type of player this year, and he's shown more in this first week of games than he has all spring. That's what his manager did say, John Farrell. So I think he has the mentality that he's ready to go out and work hard and play hard. The thing I love about the Boston Red Sox is they're a great postseason team. I'm a firm believer is you have three solid teams with any sort of organization: a preseason team, a regular season team, and a postseason team. If the Red Sox don't make it to postseason, they fail. When they do make it to postseason, they're phenomenal, and it's difficult to have that. They have the perfect mixture of veterans, new guys, maturity, lack of maturity, and all of that to really be a solid postseason team. So he has to step up to the plate, be a leader, and obviously bring in some runs and hit the ball, which is what he's supposed to be doing. So I know there's the body, scenario and all of that, but, he's showing more range. He's showing that, he's got the power. He's obviously not going to be a guy to steal bags from you, but I think he definitely has the mentality where he knows, all right, somebody's gone. I have to replace him as much as I possibly can. You cannot replace the David Ortiz. That's just physically impossible and emotionally impossible. But he definitely knows the mentality is there, and he's got to give it his all.
Jessica, we'll switch gears and talk the National League. Of course, the Chicago Cubs, one of the greatest MLB teams of 2016 we have seen in recent history. Of course, them winning 103 games. Do you think this Cubs team is the team to beat this season? And how does that affect the rookie team in the Cubs? Do you think that could affect this team has a big target on their back? Do you think that could affect this team at all coming into the 2017 season?
When it comes to the Cubs, no. I don't think that they're the type of a team where they're not necessarily worried, but they're also not the type of team that you really want to gun for, right? I mean, when it comes to other teams, having kind of like an attitude problem, a lot of people hated the Yankees, right? I don't think that they have the same mentality the Cubs do with the Yankees. It's a little bit of a different scenario. Of course, they're coming back with a lot of return players. I think I did hear some reports that the loss of Dexter Fowler could be a little bit more intense than they're willing to highlight. But you have to remember, Chris Bryant's coming back from MVP season, so we don't know if that's going to be a hangover aspect. We don't know if it's going to be a hangover aspect for the World Series. I just don't see that happening with this team. There's so much power between Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, like they mentioned, Kyle Schwarber's finally 100% healthy, and he'll be able to start the season off and finish where he left off in postseason play to tap it all off. I love watching Addison Russell. He's been the real deal for me ever since the minors, and I love watching him play. And David Ross is, of course, stepping away, but he's still going to be a good, strong clubhouse guy, clubhouse manager, if you will, for that team. And Jim Adams leading the team. So there's so many great elements going up against it. They didn't lose a lot of guys. Dexter Fowler, the loss is, of course, pretty rough, but I don't think there's anything that they can't handle. So every single team that comes back from a World Series has somewhat of a target on there. But I think the team who won the World Series the season before it has a harder time dealing with it than another team. they have a lot of pressure on themselves. They want to make sure that 2016 wasn't a fluke, but that's every single team. They're going to go out and play hard, and they're going to have fun doing it. And I love watching that team play. I don't think I've ever interviewed anyone from any part of that organization who was a negative player. They threw every single one of the guys on, even the minors and the lower levels in the organization. Is just phenomenal. I love that team from the ground up.
Jessica, before we wrap up this Fusion News interview, I had to ask. We talked the Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs. What other teams do you think will surprise the MLB fans overall in a team that we may not, be maybe overlooking this coming into the season?
I really think the Astros are going to surprise a lot of fans this year, and I kind of say that every year, but they have a special place in my heart. I think there are some. The only worries that I do have with the Astros is there's a lot of talent, but there's not a lot of placement for them. And so I don't know if that means like a season trade could happen. I do know John Singleton definitely needs a change of scenery, and you can get some really great prospects for him. And of course, there's everybody and their mom playing for the first base position. AJ Reed, Tyler White, Gaddis is of course on the team as well, and then George Springer is definitely going to come back guns blazing. You have the mid infielders in Carlos Correa and Jose Altuve. Not to mention, Giles is trying to come back from a season that he definitely wants to redeem himself with, coming out of the bullpen. So there's definitely a lot of scenarios that could work in their favor, and they do have a strong AAA, AA, farm league, if you will. They're a team that could really, really make it. I worry when they do hit the postseason because I feel like they lack maturity to be a successfully great postseason, even though they were kind of scrappy a couple years back and did wonderful. I don't think you can be scrappy and win a World Series. I think you could be scrappy and be somewhat successful in the postseason. I don't think you can take the whole thing. However, I think if they do something, they're going to make it difficult for a lot of teams to, succeed. They're definitely one of my teams that I'm excited to watch.
Okay. And this actual team, they have Brian McCann and Carlos Beltran, along with all the players you mentioned too. So, perhaps maybe the Astros can make a long postseason run, right?
Yeah, I really hope so. They definitely deserve it, and they're some of the best fans of baseball.
Okay, Jessica, final predictions. Who do you have winning the 2017 World Series? I know we're just a few weeks into spring training, but who would you like to throw out there to potentially win the World Series this year?
Oh, gosh, I hate this question. I'm going to say, winning the whole entire World Series. I mean, it's an easy play could be, the Cubs taking the whole thing again. Okay. Maybe the Cardinals. Also, is like an honorable mention for me. So one of those teams I could see definitely doing it. Okay, well, Jessica, where can the fans follow you on Twitter to follow along with you throughout the whole MLB season? You can follow me on Twitter at KleinschmidtJD, and I post all of my work on there and on my Facebook as well. Just go ahead and search Jessica Kleinschmidt, and you'll find me. Okay, great. Thank you again, Jessica, and I hope to talk to you very soon about later on in the season. All right, sounds good. Thanks, Alex. Yep, no problem. Okay, Fuse Nation, I'll be back here live with another Fusion News show very soon. Very large, guest week this week. Of course, I'll be attending the Maroon 5 concert tomorrow night, so I will not be able to do a show tomorrow night. And I will also be on the phone this Wednesday night with a very big show. Follow me on Twitter at AlexFuse to find more updates. Fuse Nation. Baseball started today. Shellmont Baseball returned. That's also a very, very good time period to really, cover some baseball. I know it's almost springtime, right? Fuse Nation, thank you for listening to this Fusion News show. Be kind to one another, and I will see you very soon. Thanks for watching.